What's up, guys? This is Mr. Eldridge, and in today's video, we're going to look at the problems with this free market. The problems, if you will, of the Gilded Age. One of the unforeseen negative consequences of this free market economy was the creation of monopolies and cartels. Monopolies are single companies that control an entire industry with no competition, and these cartels are companies that function together as a monopoly. Examples of state-supported monopolies were John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil, the Carnegie Steel Company, and Jay Gould's Union Pacific Railroad. Governments and politicians at the time believed that a monopoly would lead to greater economic stability during a recession. While many thought or hoped these monopolies and cartels would operate benevolently, most companies attempted to exploit consumers by controlling prices for maximum profit. By the early 20th century, it became clear that without competition, companies tended to artificially increase prices and or offering low quality products. The actions of such companies would later result in the Progressive Era from 1890 to 1920, an era in which the federal government began to regulate and disintegrate monopolistic entitlements. Another emergent issue in the 19th century society were political machines. Political machines are informal political groups that support individuals who were elected into office by lobbying on behalf of the public's stated interest, often for personal gain. While not specific to free market policies, many of these quote-unquote political machines allied themselves with wealthy companies and owners to benefit one another. Known as crony capitalism, political bosses benefited from bribes or campaign contributions, while the contributing company benefited from government contracts and pro-company policies. These political bosses used local ward captains to turn out or intimidate voters, appointed and controlled police and firefighters, and rewarded friends or punished enemies with local taxes, licenses, and inspections. Many, such as Boss Tweed of New York City, donated millions to the poor and education systems. They also accrued millions in state debt, bureaucratic positions, and what they often referred to as honest graft, the idea of using political authority for personal gain. By 1900, political machines had developed and controlled much of major cities like Chicago, New York, Atlanta, San Francisco, and others. Along with the political and economic corruption, the 19th century working class faced atrocious, dangerous, and miserable working conditions and pay. Working class families were often forced into tenement housing, 10 to 14-hour workdays, poor pay, child labor, and often suffered from alcoholism. Additionally, working conditions were often dangerous, and there was little to no protection for workers if they were also injured on the job or sick. Any attempts to unionize or strike were often met with resistance from business and the state, as both wanted production to flow cheaply and smoothly. When workers held a strike against Carnegie Steel Company's Homestead Steel Plant in 1892, the company hired a group of mercenaries known as the Pinkertons to put the workers back to work. After a scuffle, the Pinkertons shot and killed multiple workers. Order was later restored by the state National Guard. Carnegie Steel nor the Pinkertons faced criminal charges, and the plant was given back to the company. A similar situation developed in 1894 during the Pullman Railroad strike, when the United States Army forced strikers to work, citing that obstruction of the Postal Service was a federal offense. While the Second Industrial Revolution greatly benefited the United States, independent farmers tended to suffer. With mechanization greatly improving agriculture through the creation of new farming equipment, the equipment itself often required financing. Despite interchangeable parts making repair relatively cheap, initial costs were too high. Additionally, Real wages fell in the late 19th century as agricultural production greatly increased. With a massive increase in supply of grains and other agricultural goods, the price of grain dropped due to the massive surplus in the free market. As a result, many farmers earned less despite historic highs in agricultural production. Many farmers compounded the problem by producing more grain to make up for the reduced price. Consequently, small and medium farms began to default on their payments for the land and or equipment they purchased and were forced to declare bankruptcy, losing their assets and their livelihood.